Sometimes it seems like we are completely surrounded with messages of injustice, bigotry, and hatred. Whether it's on the news, in school, or on social media, or even under your own roof, it can be confusing or frustrating to try to make sense of it all. Sometimes, at the peak of the turmoil, it may feel hopeless. But, to some, there is a beacon of hope and an opportunity for peace in the midst of all the chaos. Kids. More specifically, the generation of post-millennials. Confident, self-expressive, liberal, upbeat, and open to change is how millennials are characterized at Pew Research Center, but post-millennials, also referred to as Generation Z, which is comprised of people currently ages 6 to 21, are already part of the most ethnically and racially diverse generation in history. They're shaping up to be the most educated generation, too. Of those that are no longer in high school, 58% are enrolled in college. Neil Gross, a sociology professor at Colby College, says there's some pretty good evidence that going to college leads people to have more liberal attitudes on social issues, in particular on issues of tolerance, of difference, and issues of gender equity. So does that mean that Generation Z is more likely to be tolerant towards those that are different than them? Children are a blank slate when it comes to tolerance and acceptance. Their views are molded by the people that they are surrounded by and the environment that they grow up in, meaning that school is probably the place that shapes someone's beliefs and morals the most. But how soon do children begin developing their own opinions? To see for myself, I went to meet a group of second graders to see how they interpreted diversity in their own lives.
She just wants to read you a story, and then we're just going to have a conversation about the story that she's reading to you. So,
I chose to read Jacqueline Woodson's book, The Day You Begin, which tells a story in the perspective of children who have immigrated from different countries that are all now starting their first day of school in a foreign land. The New York Times best-selling children's book teaches that even if you may not think that you fit in with a group of new people, there is always a way to connect. What I found was that the kids recognized cultural differences, but it didn't seem to matter. They want to be friends with everyone, and they see no reason that they can't do that with anyone they want.
Because it doesn't matter. It matters what they do, not what they look like. Don't judge a book by its cover.
right.
Mr. Josh Montgomery, head of upper school at Bayside Academy, commented on what he witnessed during the class.
It seemed as though they got more and more engaged in the story and asked more questions, were more eager to see the pictures. And then after you read, I found the students to be extremely engaged in answering the questions that you were asking them, and they were pretty open and honest about everything.
Kids aren't inherently intolerant, but it was obvious when talking to them that race was an uncomfortable topic. One student was insistent that a girl portrayed in the book was different than her, but when asked why, she was hesitant to mention that the girl had dark skin. Instead, she referred to the color of the character's hair.
English. They have black hair.
They have black hair?
We have.
Do you think that matters much?
No.
You don't think it matters?
I have more dark brown hair instead
But
of
they
black.
are different.
They have different skin?
Yeah.
Do you think it matters?
No.
Mr. Douglas Robertson, a history teacher at Bayside, had an explanation for this.
I think that as a species, we are naturally tribalistic. There are theories that part of the reason other species in our genus, the Homo genus, have become extinct because of genocide on our part, that we killed people that weren't exactly like us. But in a society that is multicultural, it becomes a problem because then you get this us versus them sort of discrimination. So the question is that tribalist mindset obsolete?
The students' engagement with the lesson clearly shows that school can have an effect on how they will continue to think about diversity throughout their lives. The classroom already offers an outlet for thought, and teachers are the primary witnesses of that development. Aside from parents, teachers are some of the most influential people in the students' lives, and teachers take that responsibility very seriously.
Parents have to make the decisions on the values, and I think they want to instill, and that's their right as parents, and I think that's totally acceptable. And hopefully the values that they instill are not ones that lead people not to accept one another because of their differences. I think educators are really not charged with changing one's ideology. Educators are more responsible for just opening up a conversation that maybe hasn't been considered at home.
Like Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Robertson believes that opening the door for students to discuss their beliefs is important, and he takes an unusual yet active approach to that by teaching his students to participate in civil discourse.
I like to do debates in class where at the very least they're learning how to speak to someone who opposes their ideas. They're figuring out how to support their ideas with evidence and assess other people's claims as well to realize, is this true or is this just sort of the mythology of thought that gets perpetuated in media a lot? The point is not to come to agreement. The point is not to convince each other. The point is to explore each other's ideas. And you have to be able to do that in a way where you don't get offended or get angry if someone doesn't agree with you or doesn't come around to your mode of thought.
No matter what they believe in, if people are able to sustain a constructive discussion, that alone would move society in a positive direction. All in all, many express their hope for the young people of today. A senior at Bayside, Grace McDonald, uses history to back up her confidence in Gen Z.
I think in terms of everything, younger people have been in the front lines of things. Like you'll see it with a lot of other examples in the past with social movements. I think when it comes to acceptance, there isn't really that much regression. That once it's established, it is established, and that the only way to go is upwards. And I feel like that's kind of the way our country is going.
Montgomery thinks that, so long as students are given an environment where they can express their beliefs, then the world will continue to move in the right direction.
I think if those children are allowed to maintain the open-minded perspectives that I saw them have, then the world will be just fine.
Something that both McDonald and Robertson agree upon is that history is set in stone, and that the only thing that the current generation of young folk can do is move forward.
What has happened with women's rights in the past 100 years is more change than happened in the previous 4,000 years, which is really interesting and encouraging. And that's just, I guess, the rate of change that happens with our development of technology and industry and all that stuff. So it does seem like in terms of sexuality and race, the amount of progress is hopeful, and every generation seems a little bit more tolerant than the previous one.
Typically, I think that when people witness insincerity and intolerance and non-acceptance, there's a generation of people that flip that script relatively quickly, and I just hope that we are moving in that direction.
The only thing we can do now is to wait for Generation Z to reach an age where they are able to enter the workforce and political scene. However, once we reach that point, it's likely that the world will witness this generation change the course of history, hopefully for the better.